My brother turned my life into a nightmare. Eventually discovered that he got my wife pregnant and our son isn't actually mine. My brother turned my life into a nightmare. Turns out he knocked up my wife and my son isn't even mine. Now he's trying to come back after our parents cut ties with him and left me their $2 million inheritance. My younger brother Jason has pretty much hated me for as long as I can remember. If you're thinking it might have been jealousy, you're mistaken. I wasn't the one who got all the attention. He was. So there was really no reason for him to feel jealous. So here's the deal. My mom has always spoiled my younger brother. He was the favorite in our family. Mom would whip up his meals, handle his laundry, and even wanted me to help him out with his schoolwork. I was supposed to lend a hand just because he's family, but that same consideration was never given to me. I eventually came to terms with it since I valued my independence. Maybe I should have seen it coming, considering I was always there for him while he never really returned the favor. He was never there for me when I needed help, only coming around when he had his own agenda. I was the quiet, introverted type who preferred studying and staying in my own world, while he was just like our dad, rough around the edges and always loud. I usually keep it real and speak my mind, no fluff or beating around the bush. I think my mom might see me in a negative light because of my upbringing. So he totally became the favorite among all of us in the family. I was totally fine with that back in the day. The issue started when he discovered a way to kind of pick on me or make fun of me for not being like him. He would tease me about my height or the fact that I was wearing glasses. He would creep into my room and attempt to read my diary just so he could go running to my mom about whatever I had penned down. I'd totally lose it and vent to my parents about him crossing the line, but they'd just chuckle and brush it off like it was nothing serious. He pulled some really awful stunts, like almost smashing my glasses and sneaking gross stuff into my meals. One time, he actually put tiny stones in my cereal, but thankfully I spotted them before they could do any damage to my teeth. I mentioned it to my mom, but she just waved it away, saying that this is how brothers connect. Whenever we had a disagreement, Jason would throw insults my way, zeroing in on my insecurities with intention. He and I attended the same school, so he knew I was dealing with some bullying from a couple of kids. He chose to back those kids instead of backing me. He would jump in with names like the ugly loser or hairy monkey, even egging on the bullies to physically hurt me because, in his eyes, I was just a big failure. There was this one time we got into an argument over something I can't quite recall, but it was likely something trivial. At the end of it, he actually told me to end my life. Most insults I can shake off without a second thought, but that particular one hit hard, especially since I was dealing with my mental health issues at the time. Feeling a lot better these days, it really hurt to find out that my own brother wished I was gone. With Dad frequently at work and Mom not really paying attention, I even got scolded by her once for playing, as if it was my fault for bothering him. It just kept spiraling down from there. Back in high school, there was this wild moment when he tried to set my hair on fire, and believe it or not, Mom totally backed him up, claiming he was just messing around. Who even plays like that, honestly? Luckily, my dad came around and highlighted that they really had some major problems. He said he would call the cops on Jason. This was a real wake-up call for my brother, as he had never faced any consequences for his actions before this moment. He was totally caught off guard, and my dad kept going on about how enough was enough, insisting that he needed to start showing some respect for his older brother. So my dad popped into my room and we had a chat. I honestly never thought my dad would back him up, especially since he always pointed out to Jason how much alike they were, and honestly, that was spot on. My dad mentioned how he had been waiting for years, hoping that Jason was just going through a phase of immaturity, but now he's starting to see that Jason is turning into quite the bully. Hearing my dad say that hit me right in the feels, and I was on the verge of tears from the validation. I finally told my dad everything Jason had put me through all those years and shared my experiences with bullying at school. My dad couldn't believe how much I was dealing with. The following day, he approached the principal to assure that my bullies were put on notice about the serious repercussions they would face if their behavior persisted. Later in the evening, my dad signed me up for MMA at our local gym. He said I should toughen up and confront the bullies I deal with. I have to say, seeing a nerdy kid like me trying to learn how to fight must have been quite the spectacle. But honestly, when it comes to learning something new, I really zone in and give it my all. I made sure to set aside time for my studies, allowing me to hit the gym daily and attend MMA classes. No big deal, but it totally transformed my life and my body. Jason was back at it again, as usual. He took my pocket money that we used to earn by helping our parents with chores. I had been stashing away my cash for a good while, so Jason totally pulled a fast one and snuck into my room to swipe my cash. I totally caught him just as he was about to ride off with his buddies. I made it clear to him that he needed to return my money because he understood that stealing was wrong. But Jason just laughed and mocked me, saying all I could do was go crying to my dad for assistance. I honestly can't explain what happened, but I just ended up throwing a solid punch right to Jason's face. He just sat there, completely shocked, as he tumbled backward onto the ground. I grabbed him, fished out my cash from his pocket, and then tossed him back onto the ground. Jason began to wail like a toddler throwing a fit. It was pretty funny to watch a teenage boy sobbing on the ground. But then my mom burst out the door, rushing to help her baby boy and figure out what went down. Upon discovering that I had gotten into a fight with him, she was taken aback and immediately began to scold me. She mentioned that, as the older brother, I ought to be teaching Jason more valuable lessons, while Jason appeared to be getting a kick out of watching me get scolded. My mom went to my dad saying I really went off on Jason and that I needed to be kept in check. My dad seriously asked us to justify our actions. I explained to him how Jason had taken the money I had worked so hard to save, while Jason tried to defend himself by saying he needed it for a date and that, as my brother, I should support him. So my dad told Jason he should consider himself lucky that I just punched him for swiping my cash, because honestly, anyone else would have straight up called the cops on him. My dad kept explaining to Jason that he had no right to just take things from others without asking first. Jason was not having it and began to throw a fit, likely hoping to get our mom on his side, but Dad stood his ground. When Jason figured out that I wasn't going to face any consequences for punching him, he yelled about how much he despised me and then bolted back to his room, slamming the door shut behind him. Ever since that incident, Jason has kept his distance from me. He finally figured out that his bullying days were over, and even my dad wasn't backing him up anymore. For the first time in ages, it really felt like we were on the same level. Although he couldn't actually harm me, he would attempt to throw nasty words my way whenever our parents weren't around. It really took a turn for the worse as he aged. It seemed like with every passing year, his anger intensified and his patience dwindled. Whenever I tried to talk to him, he would just brush me off and leave the room, muttering things like nerd or loser as he went. If he had something to say to me, he'd just go through our mom, who would pass it along. I would ask my mom why Jason couldn't just reach out to me if he needed something, and she'd urge me to be more understanding. I was totally in the dark about whether this was just him dealing with puberty and I needed to ride it out, or if he genuinely couldn't stand me. For a long time, I managed to handle the things he said, but eventually it reached a point where I felt the need to leave home just to escape him. I approached my mother numerous times, hoping she would facilitate a sit-down for us to discuss everything, but she consistently declined, claiming she didn't want to get involved. I even asked her what she thought about why he treated me like that, but she just brushed off my question. In the end, I made it to my dream, Harvard, because I was a top student and even snagged a scholarship. My dad threw a party for me, and I could tell my mom was really proud of me too. Yet, Jason kept his distance, hardly recognizing my accomplishments. Leaving for Harvard felt like a thrilling leap into the unknown, paired with a huge sigh of relief to finally break free from the negativity that surrounded me at home. The initial months at Harvard felt like a breath of fresh air. I found some awesome new friends, had a blast in my classes, and began to create a life that was totally my own, away from the heavy vibes of my upbringing. The relentless anxiety from Jason's verbal assaults faded away, and I experienced a refreshing wave of tranquility. I started dating my wife Melissa during our second year at Harvard. I met my friend at a frat party, and we totally hit it off from the start. In my religious family, having kids out of wedlock was totally frowned upon. So we discovered she was pregnant during our final year of Harvard, which led us to tie the knot right after graduation. Our wedding was a chill, low-key ceremony. Our folks were totally stoked for us, and we had an awesome time at the wedding. In that instant, I was convinced she was my one true love. I've always believed in the idea of sticking with one person, having that special someone to come home to and share my life with for the long run. Even though women have made attempts to connect with me throughout the years, I never took any steps forward because I was truly happy in my marriage. Melissa was the girl of my dreams, and I had no intention of causing her any pain. Throughout the years, there were a couple of times when I found out she was not being loyal in our marriage. There was this on and off situation that dragged on for a few years with her married colleague, and then there was a brief encounter with an ex from high school during a family visit out of state. I know some folks might think I'm being silly, and honestly, I can't argue with that when I reflect on it. After some time apart in both cases, I chose to forgive my wife. I always hoped to provide my child with a stable home, and I truly thought we could work through these difficulties together. We were pretty young when that whole thing with her coworker happened, so I just figured it was one of those youthful blunders where people don't really think things through. For a bit, it felt like everything was fine between us. I always had my reservations about her, but I made an effort to set those aside. I understood that if I decided to forgive her, it meant I needed to focus on moving forward and beginning anew. It's been 4 years since she cheated for the second time, and I really believe I made the right call by letting her prove she still wanted to be in our marriage. For a long time, it felt like Melissa had turned a new leaf, and we were truly content, with our future family plans all lined up. But 3 months back, my world got turned upside down again by yet another event that honestly felt way worse than anything else before. When she dropped the bomb that she had been seeing someone else for a while and hinted that our son might not even be mine. When I heard her words, it was like the floor just vanished beneath my feet. I was hit with a wave of shock, betrayal, and disbelief. I found it really hard to wrap my head around the sheer scale of what she had just revealed. In a fog, I finally mustered the courage to ask her why she had held on to such a huge secret and how she could have pulled off something so destructive. She responded with a chill and detached attitude. She appeared completely indifferent, as if the pain she had caused didn't even register with her. Her replies were pretty unclear, just piling on more questions instead of clearing things up. It was a wild and tough experience, facing the broken trust and the doubts surrounding my own family. I kept pushing Melissa to be honest with me because I believed I had the right to know who the father of the child was, especially since I had been the one raising our son from the start. Ultimately, she came clean and revealed it was Jason. I couldn't believe what I just heard, so I had to ask her to clarify what she really meant by that. So Melissa shared with me the story of how she and Jason became friends after I introduced her to my family during Christmas, and she ended up staying with us until the new year. It's funny how Jason, who typically had a chill vibe with me, suddenly turned all polite and warm when it came to her. I was relieved because I really didn't want to make Melissa feel out of place. She was really eager to fit in with my family, so she made it a point to chill with my mom whenever the chance came up. She picked up on the fact that Jason and I weren't exactly tight and asked me about it. I finally shared with her about my childhood connection with Jason and explained how we might never be able to fix our relationship since he never managed to get over his feelings. Melissa got it, but she began bringing Jason along whenever we went out, maybe thinking it would help us both get comfortable with each other. If we were planning a movie night, she'd bring Jason along, and then we'd end up watching whatever flick he chose. So during this period, Jason and I exchanged a few words, which was a pretty big step up from the years of silence I had been dealing with. I recall Melissa and Jason chilling and gaming together, but it never really crossed my mind as anything significant. Melissa shared with me that one day Jason really opened up about his struggles and his recent breakup with his ex-girlfriend. He appeared really open around her, and they formed a bond. She mentioned that he would occasionally flirt with her in a lighthearted way when I wasn't there, and it seems that one thing led to another, and she just couldn't hold back any longer. I shut my eyes, and the sight of my wife and brother curled up together nearly turned my stomach. She shared how guilty she felt afterward and then just bolted from him. So she made the choice to head back home, which was totally real since my girlfriend had suddenly mentioned wanting to return when I was under the impression she'd be ringing in the new year with me. I really tried to get her to stick around, but she was totally set on leaving. Once the holidays were over and we reunited at college, she was her usual bubbly self again, so I didn't think twice about it. So 2 weeks later, we discovered she was pregnant. So Melissa just dropped this bomb on me, saying she has no clue if the kid is mine or Jason's. And get this, she can't even find any proof since I'm already taking responsibility. She figured that out of the two of us, I was the more reliable brother. So she chose to stick with me, and that's how we ended up getting married. It was as if everything I knew was falling apart right before my eyes. The child I cherished and invested so much time in might not actually be my own. I asked her if she was currently sleeping with Jason, and she nodded slowly. Melissa shared with me that she and Jason had always kept in contact since their chemistry was just too strong to ignore. She would totally pull the classic move of saying she was working late, but really she was sneaking off to hotels with him. She shared that a good chunk of her business trips turned out to be more like romantic escapes with him. I asked Melissa why she would choose to be with me if she truly wanted my brother. She explained that she didn't want to be the one to end a marriage, and seeing how great I was as a father to our son, she decided to stay with me all this time. According to her, she realized she had messed up and couldn't figure out when to call it quits. I just let Melissa know that I appreciated her honesty and that I was planning to pack up and leave. Melissa broke down in tears, pleading for my forgiveness, saying she expected me to lash out at her. Yet there I was, coolly contemplating my next step. I kept to myself as I made my way to the cupboard, tossing some clothes into my suitcase. Melissa kept insisting that if I truly loved her, I should at least make an effort to fight for her, and that mistakes are a part of every marriage. Once she figured out that I wasn't going to budge, she switched things up and started talking about how a divorce would impact my son, emphasizing that kids shouldn't have to grow up in a broken home. I pointed out that I might not even be the father, and that really set her off. She broke down in tears and started yelling at me about how cruel I was being, claiming I could just walk away, even though I've been there for the kids since day one. It felt like my wife thought there was absolutely nothing that could drive me to leave our marriage. I suppose I have to take some responsibility for not addressing things sooner. Even though I had some feelings for her, it seemed more like it was because I believed we had a son together and had been in a relationship since our college days. Melissa kept insisting that it wasn't too late and that we could figure things out, but I found it hard to believe and felt like my patience was running thin with her. Trust was a huge deal for me, and honestly, her words just seemed hollow. Even if I were to forgive her, there's no way I could ever erase the fact that she had been with my own brother. I've always thought that everyone messes up sometimes and deserves a second chance since nobody's perfect. But this situation crossed a line. I walked away while she was in tears on the doorstep and booked a room at a hotel. The following day, I went directly to my parents and laid it all out. My wife's affair with Jason and how they had been sneaking around for years without us knowing. Their expressions were a mix of disbelief and surprise. My mom, being who she is, immediately jumped to Jason's defense, insisting that there's no way he could ever do something like that to his own brother. With a strong resolve to uncover the truth, I asked my parents to hold back and let me call Jason right in front of them. I told them to keep quiet because this was my chance to reveal Jason's real nature. I was hoping to create the vibe that it was just a casual chat between us, so he might feel more at ease. As Jason picked up, I laid it all out for him and confronted him with the shocking news of his affair with my wife. At first, he was totally against it and wouldn't even consider the possibility. So when I mentioned that Melissa had come clean about everything, he immediately turned on her, calling her characterless. He said it wasn't his fault that women found him attractive and claimed he was the better-looking brother. I made it clear to him that I was going to call him out in front of everyone when Jason sneered that nobody would take me seriously and that he was the favored one anyway. I rolled my eyes at his arrogance and appreciated him for validating the truth, especially since our parents had overheard everything. Jason fell silent for a moment, then started to stammer as he tried to justify himself, tripping over his words in a desperate bid to save face. My mom, still reeling from the shock, insisted that Jason explain himself. He stumbled over his words in a weak effort to explain himself, pointing fingers at everyone around him while trying to pin the blame on Melissa. I noticed my mother, who used to be so protective of her favorite son, now seemed to be grappling with a blend of disappointment and anger. In that intense moment, I experienced a peculiar feeling of validation. For years, I had put up with Jason's relentless torment. The truth is finally out, and the tables have turned. Jason found himself completely exposed, with his actions on full display for all to witness. When Jason stumbled over his words, my dad, who typically kept his feelings in check, just couldn't hide his disappointment. He asked me to hand him the phone and then just went off on him. "Jason," he started, his voice thick with judgment, "your actions aren't just a letdown to your brother. They're a letdown to the entire family. You hooked up with your brother's wife and kept it going even after they tied the knot. Your choices have led to outcomes that have permanently shattered the trust we once shared. I brought you both up to appreciate family, loyalty, and doing what's right. What you've demonstrated today completely contradicts all the values I've worked hard to teach you." He took a moment, allowing the gravity of his words to sink into Jason's mind. "Your brother's feelings deserve better consideration, and the disrespect shown towards the integrity of his marriage is simply not okay. You've not just hurt him, you've messed up the connections that keep us united as a family. I think your mom and I share some responsibility for who you've turned into, and we're not going to let you continue this behavior any longer. Effective immediately, I'm putting an end to the college funds I established for you. You can totally look into your Harvard fees yourself. I'm done supporting your way of living from now on. You really believe that hooking up with married women boosts your masculinity, huh? Let's find out what unfolds for you when my cash isn't in the picture." I, however, kept my cool the entire time. Even though I felt like yelling at Jason, seeing my dad discipline him was the sweetest form of justice. I totally called him out on his real self, and it was obvious he didn't see the fallout coming. My mother, Jason, relentless in his arguments, kept trying to defend himself. But my father quickly cut the call short, putting an end to Jason's efforts to rationalize his behavior. So my mom just came over and gave me a hug. It had been ages since we experienced something like that, but in that hug, there was this deep, unspoken connection and solidarity despite all the chaos in the family. She expressed regret for not believing me all this time. I never thought my 14-year-old self would see the day when my mom would finally get it and support me like this. After that, my dad hooked me up with a solid lawyer to help me get the divorce from Melissa. She and her lawyer attempted to play the game unfairly by demanding alimony since my income was higher. But fortunately, her infidelity worked to my advantage. We got a paternity test for my son, and it turns out Jason is definitely the father of the child. This news hit me hard, and I can't even express how much it hurt to process it. It was even more brutal than when Melissa dropped the bombshell about her cheating on me. I was really frustrated that my son wasn't mine. But hey, I suppose there's a reason behind everything, and I chose to keep my head up through it all. Melissa pleaded with me to keep visiting my son, insisting he shouldn't have to suffer for all of this, but I just couldn't bring myself to see him. He brought Jason to mind, and I couldn't stand it. Once my divorce was finalized and I was finally free, I settled into my own bachelor pad. It was such a strange experience to finally be living on my own, especially since I got married so young and hadn't really had that independence before. Honestly, I was quick to embrace my bachelor lifestyle, and I loved every moment of it, especially since I've always been independent. So a couple of weeks back, my dad hit me up to say he's been mulling over the idea of changing his will because he's not keen on leaving anything to Jason. Let me tell you, Michael is the definition of stubborn. It's like trying to move a mountain sometimes. Once he decided he wanted nothing to do with Jason, he stuck to his guns. Jason made an effort to connect with our parents, even going so far as to show up at their door, pleading for forgiveness, but he wasn't even granted entry. My mom, who typically gives in to Jason's meltdowns, appears to have reached her limit with him, even though it's probably affecting her the hardest. During all of this, Jason never bothered to send me a text to apologize for his actions, which clearly shows he didn't regret it at all. He was really bummed about being disconnected from our folks. So my dad mentioned that he's planning to leave everything to me. To avoid any future complaints from Jason, he would only be leaving him with a $1. I couldn't believe it. My dad had put in so much effort throughout his entire life. When you factor in his assets, retirement fund, and life insurance, the total would be nearly $2 million. The sole stipulation in his will was that if my dad were to die before my mom, she would still be able to live in their house, even though the ownership would transfer to me. I totally didn't mind at all because I want to be there for my mom until the very end. So out of nowhere, Jason figured everything out. Since he can't get in touch with my parents, he decided to call me yesterday to try and fix things between us. He shared how he was struggling to manage college and that ever since Melissa discovered the paternity of the child, she had been relentlessly bothering him about child support. He mentioned he was broke and searching for part-time work, but just couldn't land anything. He pleaded with me to reach out to our family so we could have a clean slate, as he genuinely needed my support. I couldn't help but laugh at his expression and told him I was completely over it. I made it clear he should have considered the consequences before getting involved with my wife and knocking her up. Jason began to insist that I was being unreasonable and that she shared the blame, which I acknowledged. I pointed out that I had divorced her and now she was his responsibility. He shouldn't be coming to me with complaints about her or her child, as this was the result of his own choices. Kalen began to raise his voice, but I interrupted him, reminding him that he was no longer the golden child of the family. Instead, he had become the outcast who had an affair with his own brother's wife. Jason broke down in tears and shared how everyone, including our grandparents and relatives, had been giving him a hard time, which was accurate, but honestly, it wasn't my problem anymore. I let him know that it was over between us and that he should never reach out again, as I no longer considered him my brother. I can't stop going over that conversation in my mind, replaying it endlessly. Even though I can't stand my brother, I had never actually heard him cry, at least not since we were kids. I won't pretend it didn't sting a little seeing him so vulnerable. I'm wondering if I should bring this up with our parents about him, or would it be a mistake if I don't? Hey folks, just a quick update. Many of you have been wondering why I've cut off contact with my son, Ethan, and some of you have even labeled me as cruel. Honestly, I have to be real here. I just don't feel right about raising someone else's kid. This isn't a situation involving a stepson. I thought he was my son, but then I found out he's actually my brother's kid. I'm definitely feeling hurt and have shed tears over it for days. The main reason I want no contact with Ethan is that I don't want Melissa in my life anymore. If I engage with her kid, she'll definitely find a way to worm her way back into my life, and I really need to maintain my own space. Label me however you want, but there's no way I can face him again. Not now, and probably not for a long while. Update 2. So it turns out that many of you were right. It was my mom who spilled the beans to Jason about my dad changing his will. He reached out to me as a last-ditch effort to fix things. I called her out in front of my dad, and she totally lost it. She mentioned that I had already given Jason enough punishment and that he had understood his lesson. My dad made it clear to my mom that if she thought what Jason did was something to forgive, then he couldn't continue being married to her because he could never get past that betrayal. His threat really put an end to my mother's chatter. My dad straight up told her that if she ever spoke to Jason and we caught wind of it, she should just get her things and leave him. As I mentioned, my dad can be really set in his ways. I really hope my mom can figure things out and grow from her past choices. Update 3, I checked it out. It's been a solid 5 months since I last checked in. I've noticed some positive changes in my relationship with my parents recently. Every weekend, my dad and I hit the golf course, and honestly, he treats me more like a friend than a father. My mom, despite missing Jason, has kept her distance from him. The most recent update I got about Jason came from my cousin, who mentioned that Jason had been hitting up everyone for cash. Ultimately, he ended up dropping out of college because he couldn't cover his expenses anymore. So it looks like he and Melissa are shacking up, and he's got a part-time gig as a mechanic, or so I've heard. It seems like they're co-parenting Ethan, which is probably a positive thing, I suppose. I never mention Jason when talking to my parents, and they don't bring him up either. Just to let you all know, I'm doing pretty well. I got a promotion at work a couple of months back, and my salary has definitely seen a nice boost since then. I haven't been seeing anyone lately because I think I need some time and space to work on myself. I've started attending some therapy sessions, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see how that goes.